Thank you, Charlie. He knows that I don't like to tell stories. I don't know why he ever gets me in these positions. Maysville, Arkansas. That's where I live. It's way up in the northwest corner of Arkansas. It's right on the Oklahoma-Arkansas line. It's 6 miles from the Arkansas-Missouri line. Now, the Oklahoma-Arkansas line runs through the back street of Maysville, Arkansas. There's only 2 streets, and the back street is the Oklahoma-Arkansas line. Now, really, I don't live in Arkansas. I live in Oklahoma. I live on the first section line inside Oklahoma on a small farm. I pay my taxes in Delaware County, Oklahoma. My car tags come from the state of Oklahoma. I have an Oklahoma driver's license, but the address on my Oklahoma driver's license is Maysville, Arkansas, because Maysville, Arkansas has the nearest post office, and I guess maybe I'm one of the few people in the world that lives in Oklahoma with an Arkansas address on their driver's license. My phone comes out of Arkansas, although I do live in Oklahoma. And for a long time I had an area code which was 501, which is the Arkansas area code. But here 3 or 4 years ago, when they busted up AT&T, they decided that everybody that lived on the other side of the line would have to have an Oklahoma area code. So even though I've got an Arkansas phone number, I have an Oklahoma area code, which is 918. They tell me you can call either number and get me, whether it's Oklahoma, Arkansas, or not. Now, Maysville, Arkansas is such a small little town. We don't really have a bank in Maysville, Arkansas, and the closest bank is in Southwest City, Missouri. So I bank at a bank in Southwest City, Missouri, which is called the Cornerstone Bank. Now, this creates a lot of confusion even when you're sober, but especially when you're drinking. If you're out on one of those running drunks and you've been gone from home several days and you wake up some morning and you're in a strange town and you don't have any money and you don't have anything to drink and you're really sick and you need something to drink bad, normally you go into a liquor store and you try to con them into cashing the check if you got your checkbook with you. Well, most liquor stores don't want to cash checks for strangers, but if you can convince them how desperately in need you are and how honest you are, then usually they'll say, well, I guess so. And they'll say, let me see your driver's license or some form of identification. And you show them this Oklahoma driver's license with this Arkansas address on it, and it usually takes 10 or 15 minutes to get that all explained to them, and finally he says, I guess that's all right, go ahead and write the check. And then you whip out your checkbook on the Cornerstone Bank in Southwest City, Missouri. And there ain't no way you're going to cash a check that morning, I'll guarantee you. Today, though, that sometimes does help me. If the police stop me and they want to see my driver's license, and I show them this Oklahoma driver's license with the Arkansas address, immediately they question that because that's really not supposed to be. And you start explaining this to the policeman, and after a while, 10 or 15 minutes later, he says, oh, hell, why don't you just go on home, but don't come back this way anymore. It even helps sometimes in sobriety. Joe?
My name's Joe, and I'm a real alcoholic. I'm cut off.
Lack of power, that's his dilemma. I've been waiting all weekend to get to say that.
I get a lot of fun out of Maysville, Arkansas. Charlie, on one occasion, Charlie woke up one night and there was some confusion going on over some, I don't know, 5 or 6 miles from town, but something going on. And woke Barbara up, and she looked out the window, and Charlie kind of roused and asked Barbara, what's going on? Barbara said, oh, ain't nothing matter, Charlie. Go on back to sleep. Said, just a fire in Maysville. And Charlie said, well, you mean it ain't no trouble? Hell, ain't but 2 buildings, half the town's burned down, and I'm on the volunteer fire department. It don't make no difference.
I need also to but maybe explain a little something about what we were talking about this afternoon when we were in step 9. And you all have heard me mention Barbara several times, and how badly I hated her when I took step 4. And whether I really didn't want to put her name on that amends list, whether I didn't know or not. And then somebody asked me a while ago, said, well, are you and Barbara still living together? I wanted to let you know, yeah, we are. Barbara and I are in love with each other today. She is a good, strong Al-Anon member. In fact, she is a black belt Al-Anon. Between her practicing her program and me practicing my program, Barbara and I have a real fine life together. Any of you that know Barbara know that is true. And I guess maybe for the first time we really are in love with each other. I think we got married maybe for the wrong reasons. We both came in heat about the same time. But now that we're older, I think we really do love each other. Because of Al-Anon and because of AA, and no other reason. If it hadn't been for those 2 programs, we certainly wouldn't be here today. On page 83, also, as we were finishing up on step 9, it talked about these amends that we could not make in that 3rd paragraph on page 83. And in the end of that paragraph, it said, there may be a valid reason for postponing in some cases, but we don't delay if it can be avoided. We should be sensible, tactful, considerate, and humble without being servile or scraping. As God's people, we stand on our feet. We don't crawl before anyone. And I think one mistake that we see people making sometimes today is in our zeal to get everybody to like us. Sometimes we go to them to make our amends, and let's face it, they don't always accept our amends. I had 1 or 2 tell me that, Charlie, we didn't much like you when you were drinking, and we're not too crazy about you now. We're just about soon you'd leave us alone. But sometimes in our zeal to get those people to like us, we're not satisfied with that answer, and we keep going back. And we go back, and we go back, and we go back to that same individual, literally begging them to forgive us for what we've been in the past. And my book says I don't need to do that. It said as God's people, we stand on our own feet. We don't have to crawl before anyone. The purpose of these amends is to remove our shame, our fear, our guilt, our remorse. And if they don't accept them, then that really becomes their problem. If we've done absolutely the best we can to make the amends, and if we've cleared off our side of the street, and they don't want to accept that and it's part of their life, then that becomes their problem. It's no longer ours. And we really don't have to crawl or beg anyone to forgive us for what we've done in the past. We need to ask for that forgiveness, but we certainly don't need to beg for it. And I believe this is rather important to the majority of we alcoholics anyhow, Joe.
Okay. This brings us to the promises in the big book. Someone asked me at lunch today to be sure to share my little joke on sex. We've gotten way away from 69. But I guess it was a young couple that decided to get married, and they went to the priest to ask about getting married, and the priest said, well, I'll be glad to marry you. And they told him they wanted to get married right away, and he said, well, I don't know if y'all understand, he said it's doing Lent, and we don't haven't married anybody doing Lent. He said, if y'all could wait. They said, oh, we want to get married right away. He said, well, I could marry you right away, and if y'all would make some sort of extreme sacrifice, that's the only way. And they said, well, we want to get married right away. We can't wait. And so he said, well, what would y'all like to do for a sacrifice? He said, whatever you suggest. It doesn't make any difference. He said, well, why don't y'all just give up sex for the rest of Lent, and then, it'll be all right, and I can marry you. So they said, well, that's kind of tough, but we'll do it. So they gave up. They made a pledge to give up sex, and he went on and married them. And after a couple of weeks, he met the young man downtown and asked him, said, how's the marriage life? He always said, just beautiful, beautiful, everything's fine. He said, well, how did you do on the sacrifice? He said, oh, we did fine for a while. He said, but we had a little trouble. He said, we were just doing fine, and my wife had on one of these short miniskirts, and said she dropped a can of peas on the floor, and she bent over to pick them up and said, I just couldn't go no further. And the priest said, well, son, don't you know they'll put you out of church for that? He said, I figured they would. He said, they put me out in the supermarket, you know.
You can tell we're both getting older. We talk about it a hell of a lot.
Okay, we come to the promises. And we talk about the promises in the big book. This is, I think, you know, what I hear over the years and before, I hear a lot of people talking about the promises of the book. And really, they really have no meaning, and a lot of times about any textbook. When we take things out of the textbook and discuss them, they don't have a lot of emphasis, or they lose their meaning when you take them out of context with the rest of the book. I think what really makes the promises come alive in the book, that they come after the first 9 steps. You know, when we learn that that's just where they are. And after we have covered these 3 dimensions of life, and throughout our book it talks about these 3 dimensions, then we come to the promises of the book. And our book talks about a design of living throughout the book. We will see out where the book has mentioned this. And, you know, life does have it has a design to it. Everything has a design to it. And I think this is the greatest thing that Alcoholics Anonymous gives us, is it gives us a design of living. It teaches us how man should live. And this design is not new. It's old as mankind himself. Every religion and every philosophy of life talks about this design. There was a man 2,000 years ago who said the same thing. You know, it was said in a different way. Nothing is really new. It's said in a different way. And they asked him about a design of living, and he said that love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and all thy soul. And that's the center. That's 1, 2, 3.
Steps 1, 2, and 3.
And he said, in all thy mind.
And that's 4, 5, 6, and 7.
And he said, and thy neighbor as thyself.
And that's steps 8 and 9.
So the words is different and something, but the principle is the same. This talks about the same basic design of living. And if we have went through these steps, then in these 9 steps, we have the simple 9 steps. We have rebuilt our lives from the inside out. And once we have done that, then we have the promises. If we are painstaking about this phase of our development, we'll be amazed before we are halfway through. We are going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity, and we will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we see that our experience can benefit others. That feeling of usefulness and self-pity will disappear. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations used to baffle us. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we cannot do for ourselves. Are these exaggerated promises? We think not. They are being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly. This is the spiritual experience. Sometimes slowly. This is the spiritual awakening. They will always materialize if we work for them.
You know, if we look at these promises and look at them closely, we'll notice that none of these have anything to do with the human body at all. All of these deal with the mind. And if we comprehend the word serenity and we know peace, if we can look and see no matter how far down the scale we've gone, that we can benefit others. And when that feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear, these all deal with a change of attitudes of the mind itself. And I think it's plain to see that if we have received these promises in our life, we have most certainly undergone an extreme personality change from the kind of person we used to be to the kind of person these promises promise us we can be. And if we've undergone that personality change sufficient to recover from the disease of alcoholism, then we have really had a spiritual awakening right here at the end of step 9, or a spiritual experience, whichever the case might be. One may be fast and one may be slow. And my book promises me that these things will happen to me. And it only puts one stipulation on them. It says, if we work for them. Now, I keep hearing people say, just keep coming to AA meetings, just keep bringing the body, the mind will follow. If you go to AA meetings long enough, you'll soak it up by osmosis and everything will be okay. And don't you believe that. That's a lie also. Things do not get okay just by going to AA meetings. Now, there's certain things that we have to do if we want these promises to take place in our life. If we want the changes to occur, it's necessary for us to use the first 9 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And these things occur as the result of the first 9 steps. You remember way back in the beginning we talked about the fact that first we must believe. And we did that in step 2. And then we said we must decide, and we did that in step 3. And then we said we must act, and we do that in steps 4 through 9. Then as the result of the action taken, that is when we receive the promises in the big book Alcoholics Anonymous. And promises almost always occur after we have done something. Now, you remember as a kid growing up, sometimes on Saturday we would want to go out and do something. In mine and Joe's particular time of life, what you did on Saturday afternoon was, if you were fortunate, you got to go to the picture show or the movies on Saturday afternoon. And if you didn't get to go to the picture show on Saturday afternoon, just forget it on Sunday at church, because you wouldn't have nothing to talk to the other kids about at all. And Saturday afternoon was a big deal, going to the picture show, getting a Coca-Cola or a Pepsi-Cola or an RC Crown Cola and a bag of popcorn and maybe, just maybe, a candy bar. And Mother used to always say on Saturday morning, I'd say, Mama, am I going to get to go to the picture show this afternoon? And she'd say, Son, I'm going to let you go after. And she would outline for me a series of steps that it would be necessary for me to take. After you mow the grass, after you do this, and after you do that, and after you do that, then I'm going to let you go to the picture show. Now, and these promises are the same way. Promises nearly always mean you're going to have to do something in order to receive them. And in order for us to get what the book has to offer to us, it is necessary that we work for this, and the work is involved in steps 3 through 9. And we actually take this work, we do this action, and we change our personality. We've been able to see all the way through where our personality would change at the end of step 3 to a certain extent. It changed some in step 4 to a certain extent. It changed some in 5. It most certainly began to change in 6 and 7. And that change continued right on through steps 8 and 9. Now, instead of being a restless, irritable, discontented person, now instead of being one that's filled with shame, fear, guilt, and remorse, we are one who now has these promises in our mind, and that is an entirely different person than what we were when we first started way back there on steps 2 and 3 and etc. And I think so many times today we take the promises out of the context of the big book. We don't fit them in where they belong. Not too long ago I went to a hospital to visit a guy that we'd put in there for detox, and he was really sick. I mean, he was so sick he just couldn't he didn't hardly know what his name was. And one of my buddies was in the room with him, and my buddy had the big book out, and he was reading the promises to him. I said, hell, don't read the promises to him. Read the doctor's opinion to him. That's what he needs to understand. The promises come after the first 9 steps. He needs to know what the hell's the matter with him. And so many, many times we will take the newcomer and we give him these promises, but we do not bother to tell him what goes before the promises. And there's some work that does have to take place. And I really believe that's our job. I think that's our responsibility as older members of Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, the newer people that come to AA today, and I guess it's always been this way, they're used to living in the problem. They're used to being out there in the world practicing alcoholism and whatever else it might be that they do. And when they come into AA, left to their own resources, the only thing they know to talk about is the problem. It's up to the older members to say, now look, the problem isn't the problem. What we need to be talking about is the solution to the problem. And I don't know why we hesitate to do that, because when we don't tell them that, then we really let the new people in AA, who are the sickest of the sickest, determine what our program is going to be within our meetings by letting them sit there and talk about the problem rather than talk about recovery. And that's mine and your job to explain to them, sure, you can have these things. Sure, you can get rid of those problems, but there's certain things you have to do in order to do that. And then we need to be showing them the actual 12-step program of recovery. We need to be explaining to them step 1 and 2. We need to show them and help them and walk with them as they work these steps 4 through 9, and then they can experience the same thing that we have. But they'll never know unless we tell them. You know, I think today in AA we're playing the numbers game. I think we're trying to get more and more and more people in AA, and we're bringing them in by hundreds of thousands. But by golly, we've already got hundreds of thousands of people in AA who are dying from the disease of alcoholism, and nobody is helping them understand what the problem is and understand the solution to the problem and how to apply this thing in their life. And hopefully this weekend will change some of that. You know, hopefully we can leave here and go back with the idea, now this is how we actually help other people who suffer from the disease. This is how they receive the promises, by using these steps that go before the promises. I'm going to read these promises one more time. I just love them. I love the way I read them too. But as I read these, I'm going to add some of Charlie's words to it. And the words I'm going to add is whenever I took a drink of alcohol. Now this was back in the beginning of my drinking, when alcohol was my friend, whenever alcohol would do for me what I couldn't do for myself, when I could drink that alcohol and become 6 foot tall, facial features change, Fred Astaire on the dance floor, and the world's greatest lover in the back seat of that 36 Chevrolet. Now, this is the way alcohol used to make me feel in the very beginning. Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, I knew a new freedom and a new happiness. Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, I did not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, I comprehended the word serenity and I knew peace. Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, no matter how far down the scale I had gone, I could see how my experience would benefit others. Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, that feeling of uselessness and self-pity would disappear. Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, I lost interest in selfish things and gained interest in my fellows. Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, self-seeking would slip away. Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, my whole attitude and outlook upon life would change. Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, fear of people and of economic insecurity would leave me. Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, I would intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle me. Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, I would suddenly realize that God is doing for me, or that alcohol was doing for me what I could not do for myself. You see, all my life, I have been searching for a sense of ease and comfort. And one day I took a drink of alcohol and I found that sense of ease and comfort. All of these promises began to take place in my life whenever I took the drink of alcohol. And I loved the way it made me feel so much that I immediately became obsessed with the idea of drinking alcohol. And for many years, alcohol gave me that sense of ease and comfort. I would get in trouble once in a while, but not too bad. The benefits I received from it for a long time far outweighed the bad things that occurred to me. And then one day alcohol turned against me. And alcohol began to literally destroy me. And I would drink it and I would not get any more of these promises, and I would simply get drunker and drunker and sicker and in more and more trouble. You know, I think the real miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous is this: that because of the first 9 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, I receive in my life today the exact same feelings that I used to get from alcohol whenever alcohol was my friend. Now, if I can get those feelings in my life today without drinking alcohol, by using the first 9 steps, then I certainly do not need to drink alcohol in order to change the way I feel. And I think this is the real miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous. These 9 steps give me that sense of ease and comfort that I've always wanted and always searched for all my life, and that I used to get out of alcohol when alcohol was still my friend. And you know, to the best of my knowledge, the first 9 steps have never given me any of the bad things that alcohol gave to me. I don't believe I've ever been thrown in jail over working the first 9 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't believe I've ever been drug into a divorce court because of the first 9 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't believe I've ever vomited. Damn near did a time or two, but I don't think I've ever really vomited from working the first 9 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. This gives me everything that I used to get out of alcohol, gives me none of the bad things alcohol gave me, and therefore it isn't necessary for me to drink alcohol anymore. I feel good without the use of alcohol to make me feel better. And I think that's the real miracle of the first 9 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, if we have received these in our life, and for the first time, if we are really right in the first 3 dimensions of life, all 3 of them, if we really got right with God in 1, 2, and 3, and if we really got right with ourselves in 4, 5, 6, and 7, and if we really got right with our fellow man in 8 and 9, and if we have received these promises in our life for the first time, man, we feeling good without anything artificial to make us feel good. And if we aren't careful, right here is where we'll want to stop. Because we'll say to ourselves, I've never felt anything like this before in my life. I've never felt this good before, and I see no reason to go any further, period. And many of us will stop at the end of step 9. And we're in trouble if we do. Because nothing within our universe remains the same. You know, people will tell us that steps 10, 11, and 12 are maintenance steps. And we don't necessarily agree with that, because we don't believe you can maintain anything at all. Everything in our universe is either growing or it's dying. Everything within our universe is expanding or contracting. Everything is either progressing or regressing. It's going forward or it's going back. You take the most beautiful tree in the world and you watch it year after year after year, and it grows and it grows and it grows, and it's a beautiful thing, but one day it quits growing. And whenever it quits growing, it begins to die and eventually reverts back to something that's not so pretty anymore. Probably the human life is the most complex thing that we know of within our universe, and it's a beautiful thing. And as we grow and we grow and we grow and we grow, finally we get about age 18, 19, somewhere in there, and we quit growing. And the day we quit growing, we start dying. This beautiful building that we're in, you know, people say, we can maintain this building. And we really can't. To maintain means to keep as is. And over a definite period, an indefinite period of time, you can't keep anything as is, because always it's either going to become better or worse. We could spend $1.5 million on this building to maintain it, and someday this sucker's going to fall down. And the human personality is the same way. It cannot stay where it is. If I try to stop at the end of step 9 and hold on to these promises, then eventually I will begin to lose them. Eventually they will begin to slip away from me. Eventually I will begin to have problems with people. And as I begin to have problems with people, then that begins to back up in my mind, and I begin to get sick in my head. And as I get sick in my head, then that backs up into the Spirit, and it blocks me off from the sunlight of the Spirit. And then sooner or later I end up getting drunk all over again. There seems to be no stopping point. Now, Bill talked twice in the big book, once in his story on page 8, once in chapter 2 on page 25, about a 4th dimension of existence that they have never even dreamed of. The normal 3, of course, are the spirit, the mind, and the physical, sociological relationship with the world and everything in it. And we can see how we got those straightened out in the first 9 steps. But then he talks about a 4th dimension that goes beyond these three. A dimension of living that most people never get into, and most people never even dream that that dimension exists. And it seems to be a dimension where we can make a contact with this God as we understand Him, and this contact can be kept over long periods of time, to where we can begin to kind of go through life without suffering all the pain that we used to suffer, without the angers and the fears and the resentments and the depressions and the worries which have been so common in our life in the past. In order to do that, I'm going to have to continue to grow. I've already begun to make some contact with this God that dwells within me, this pool of knowledge that seems to be within every human being. And if I can just bring that knowledge onto the surface, then that knowledge seems to intuitively help me handle all these things which used to really screw me up. But in order to do that, I've got to grow closer, I've got to get a better contact, and I've got to be able to hold on to that contact over a longer and longer period of time as time goes by. And I believe we're going to be able to see in the big book where the last three steps are not really maintenance steps, that they are growth steps, to put us even further than the promises have put us, which are on page 83 and 84. Let's look and see if we can see where 10, 11, and 12 will add to our growth rather than try to maintain what we've got at the end of step 9. Joe?
Yeah, as we look at these growth steps, we look at the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous and the people within the fellowship. And I think one thing that throws us off somewhere in the whole picture of the program is some of the things we have created in the fellowship. It's not to knock them. I think they all were created with good intentions and probably serve some good purposes. We have gotten away from the quality of sobriety, and the fellowship is looked toward the real quantity of sobriety. We'll put a lot of stock in how many years you've been sober, rather than the quality of our lives. And that's not in the big book at all. The big book doesn't have anything in there about how long you've been sober at all. That was created by the fellowship. The big book doesn't have anything in there about birthday cakes and coins. We added all that, And I think we see in Alcoholics Anonymous all types. If we go on back and look at our groups and forget about the length of sobriety and look at the quality, we would all get a different picture of our groups and Alcoholics Anonymous as a whole. We have all types of people in Alcoholics Anonymous. We got people happy, and in this fourth dimension of existence, we talk about that sparkle in the eye. You see a few of those. And you see some people kind of mediocre, good days and bad days, and then you see a lot of people sitting around in AA that you would like to buy a drink. I mean, they really need one. I mean, they really do. There's some sick people, And really, we were talking about today, they really have individuals, and Alcoholics Anonymous, they have the right as individuals to live as they choose. I think one of the greatest things that we've missed is we concentrate so much on sobriety and not on the quality of our lives. And then we have the opportunity to live and be happier than most people on the face of this earth, and I think we really deserve to what we've been through. And this is what the fourth dimension really gives us. It offers us a way of living that we never knew existed. And we can know a little bit about heaven. That is a little bit about heaven. If we practice and continue to grow by using these tools in Alcoholics Anonymous.
Bill talked 3 times in the big book about a design for living that really works. At least 3, there may be more. But I'll give you the page numbers, and you might want to look them up tonight. He says that on page 15. And he said that on page 28. And he says that on page 81. A design for living that really works. You see, what my problem has always been is I didn't know how to live. Nobody ever taught me how to live. When I went to school, when I went to church, amongst all my friends, nobody ever told me how to live. They gave me a bunch of rules that I ought to follow. And not knowing how to live, I ended up breaking every one of those rules. And finally, when I got to AA and picked up the big book Alcoholics Anonymous, I found a design for living that really works, that tells me how to conduct my life. And as I use this design for living that really works, I find myself with a degree of happiness, peace, and serenity that I've never been able to experience before in my life. And I must believe it's because this design for living has finally brought my will into confirmation with the will of my God as I understand it. And I never could follow God's will before because I simply did not know how to do it. I knew what it was, but I didn't know how to do it. Today, we know how to do it. And that's what these last 3 steps will take us on further than step 9 and take us on into this 4th dimension of existence where we find a life that we never before dreamed possible.
Okay. That's the end of this 4th dimension. It says, this thought brings us to step 10, which suggests we continue to take personal inventory. And personal inventory, that's the total person, the total design. And continue to set right any mistakes as we go along. The vigorous commence this way of living as we clean up the past. We have entered the world of the Spirit.
And most certainly we've had a spiritual experience if we have entered the world of the Spirit.
Step 5 was the beginning, and here in step 10 he says we have entered the world of the Spirit. Our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness.
It did not say to stay the same or maintain. It said to grow in understanding and effectiveness.
This is not an overnight matter. It should continue for a lifetime. Continue to watch for selfishness, dishonest, resentment, and fear.
What step did we use to look at those things before? Step 4, didn't we? Okay.
When they crop up, we ask God at once to remove them.
What steps did we use for that before?
6 and 7.
Steps 6 and 7, didn't we? Okay.
We discuss them with someone immediately.
And what step did we do that in? 5, okay.
And we make amends quickly if we've harmed anyone.
And what steps did we use for that? Steps 8 and 9, didn't we? Okay.
Then we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help. Love and tolerance of others is our code. And we can see here that step 10 is a continuous practice of the action steps. You know, the actions that we took for the progress we got to the promises, we'll continue these actions on a daily basis. And continue to watch for these things each day coming back into our lives. And I think that, you know, that as we practice this, we're growing further because we're using the same tools to eliminate our grosser handicaps. And now we continue to use these tools on a daily basis to eliminate some of our other handicaps and to get the new ones as they come up and develop in our lives.
I think it's quite easy to see. The promises were the result of steps 4 through 9, basically. Now then, in step 10, all we do is turn right around and work those steps on a continual daily basis. And we continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. And that's step 4. Whenever you do that on a daily basis, day after day after day, you are bound to learn more about yourself. You can't stay the way you are if you do that. You will learn more and more and more about your character defects. And when these crop up, you ask God at once to remove them. And when you do that, character defects become less and less and less. You can't stay the way you are and do this step the way it says. And then you go discuss this with someone immediately. And when you do that, you again learn more and more and more about yourself. And then you make amends quickly if you've harmed anyone. And when you do that, you can't stay the way you are because your relationship with the world and the people in it will become better and better and better. I would defy anybody in this room to work step 10 as the book says to work it and remain the way you are. You absolutely cannot do that. Now there is a great, great danger in working the steps off the wall. You know, when you read step 10 up on the wall somewhere, it says, continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. And we tend to think in our mind that all that's talking about is to see if we been wrong? And if so, admit it, make an apology, or whatever we need to do. And we can see that step 10 in the book carries a lot more action and work than just looking to see where we're wrong. It said, look for resentment. Look for selfishness. Look for dishonesty. Look for fear. There's very seldom a day that comes in my life that I don't experience some of those things. And it says when these crop up, we ask God at once to remove them. Now somewhere down the line we've got the idea that we need to wait till we go to bed at night to do anything about this at all. Now step 10 doesn't say that at all in the big book. I'd rather do it at night than not do it at all. But you know, I don't get in a hell of a lot of trouble anymore after I go to bed. I used to, but I don't get in much trouble after I go to bed now. Most of the trouble I have occurs in the daytime. And it really doesn't make any sense for me to get all fouled up in the morning, to get mad or upset with somebody at 9 o'clock in the morning, and carry that with me all day, and screw up all the rest of the day, and then wait till I go to bed at night to do something about it. You know, I've spent all the lifetime that I want to spend in that kind of crap. I love feeling good. I love to be joyous. I love to be free. I love to be free of those kind of things. And I want to feel good every moment that I can for the rest of my life. And I don't want to waste any more days in that jazz. And when it does come up, if I will do what my book tells me to do, I can do something about it right there. You screw me up at 9 o'clock, and I can stop right then and say, okay, Charlie, what character defect has come to the surface this time? Is it selfishness? Is it dishonesty? Is it inconsideration? Is it resentment? Is it fear? What is it? And I can spot it every time. You know, I learned how to do that in step 4. And then I can turn to God and I can say, God, take this away from me. I don't want to be this way. You know I want to feel good. I learned how to do that in step 6 and 7. And I learned how to practice the opposite. I can turn right around and instead of being mad, you know, I can try to be calm. Instead of being inconsiderate, I can say, well, maybe they were right in the first place. I learned how to do that in 6 and 7. I can take this and discuss this with someone immediately. And when I do, they're going to help me see what this thing is. I can't be honest with me. I never have been able to. And they can help me see what's going on in my life. And it helps me learn more about it. I learned how to do that in step 5. And then if I did hurt anybody, I can make amends quickly. I learned how to do that in 8 and 9. And I can be through with that thing in 10 or 15 minutes. It can be free from my mind. It can be gone. And the rest of the day can be okay. I don't have to feel bad anymore if I don't want to. But again, with that goes an awesome responsibility. Knowing that to be true, and knowing that I know how to get rid of that. If I feel bad today, I can't blame it on you anymore. I can't blame it on them, and I can't blame it on circumstances. The only way that you can make me feel bad is if I choose to let you make me feel bad. Because I know exactly how to get out of that. Step 10 in the big book tells me that. And as I practice this on a daily basis, day after day after day after day, I have got to continue to grow. I have got to have more promises coming into my life. I have got to start feeling better and better and better and better as the result of the use of step 10. That's why in 4, we only looked at grosser handicaps. The book recognizes in step 4, we can't refine all this stuff that's wrong with us. You know, it said, look at the grosser handicaps. And then that removes enough of the crap out of our head that in 10 we can go through this refining process, and this is what we will practice for the rest of our life, over and over and over on a daily basis from now on, whenever we feel screwed up, if we want to get out of it. You know, I don't really understand why, but once in a while I don't want to get out of it. You know, once in a while I want you to make me mad. Once in a while I just love to romp and stomp and cuss and raise hell. I don't really know why, because it really doesn't make me feel better. But I recognize today, if you do that to me, it's because I've let you do that. I can no longer blame you, other people, or circumstances. This is my responsibility to feel good. It's not God's, and it's not yours to make me feel good. It is my responsibility to make me feel good, and I know exactly how to do it. Now, after I practice step 10 for a while, I get another complete new set of promises in my life. I hear over and over and over about the promises on page 83 and 84. Never do I hear anybody talk about the promises on page 84 and 85. There's another completely new set of them that starts on the bottom of page 84 after step 10.
Okay, it's strange. Someone pointed out to me that there's the same amount of promises after the 10th step that there are after the 9th step, but we don't ever really consider those too much. And we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. For by this time sanity will have returned.
Now, we came to believe in step 2 that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. By this time, sanity has returned.
We will seldom be interested in liquor. If tempted, we will call from it like a hot flame. We will react sanely and normally. And we will find that this has happened automatically. It just comes. That is the miracle of it. We're neither fighting it, neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we have been placed in a position of neutrality and safe and protected. We have not even sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. It does not exist for us. We are neither cocky or we are afraid. This is our experience. This is how we react as long as we keep in fit spiritual condition, and there is as work that we have for those promises. We have to keep in fit spiritual condition to have those promises met in our lives each day.
See, the other promises materialize if we work for them. These promises materialize and stay with us, providing we keep in fit spiritual condition. Now, remember way back on page 45 in the book where it said the main object of this book is to enable you to find the power greater than yourself which will solve your problem. And we emphasized then that it didn't say which will enable you to solve it, and it didn't say which will help you solve it. It said which will solve your problem. Now, somewhere between page 45 and page 85, the problem has been solved. And I'll never forget the day I became aware of this. Somewhere within these steps, and I don't really know when, what step or what page, but I woke up one morning and I said, Charlie, there's sure something different in your life today. And I said, what is it? And I said, you don't want to take a drink. And I said, how long has it been since you wanted to take a drink? And you know, I couldn't remember how long it had been. Somewhere, somehow, through the process of working these steps, the obsession to drink alcohol was removed from my mind. Now that is the real miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous. For 40 years, at 26 of that 40 anyhow, my mind was obsessed every day with the idea of drinking alcohol. And suddenly that was removed from my mind. And this is the real miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous. That's why I don't drink today. That's why I don't find it necessary to drink today, because God has removed the obsession of the mind to drink. I no longer want to drink. I no longer desire to drink. I no longer need to drink. I've received everything that I need from the big book and the steps Alcoholics Anonymous. Sanity has returned. Remember, sanity is to believe a lie. And I used to believe insanity is to believe a lie. And I used to believe I can drink. I haven't believed that in a long time. I know for sure I can't drink without getting drunk and sick and in all kinds of trouble. And this is the real miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, everybody wants this, but most of them want it without any effort on their part. And this comes as the result of working these steps. As we work steps 4 through 9, as we work step 10, somewhere in this process, the obsession to drink is removed, sanity has returned, and alcohol is not a problem for us anymore. Now, that's how I react to it. as long as I keep in fit spiritual condition.
You know, I think we can see the promises there as I know I can see them as they've been fulfilled in my life. You know, Sanity has returned, and our book says we were insane when it came to alcohol. And now we can make common sense decisions about alcohol. And it's been said the only thing we have to do is to stay sober, is to have common sense. You don't have to be a genius to stay sober. You know, you really have to be insane to walk in the liquor store and buy something that damn near killed you 6 weeks ago.
My old sponsor always said, if you're smart enough to know the difference between whiskey and water, you're smart enough to stay sober.
We'll be seldom be interested in liquor. And all once we come to the point, you know, where we're fighting this thing and we're not even interested. We wake up one day and we're not interested anymore. And we are tempted. But when we're tempted, we crawl from it like a hot flame. You know, in our new sobriety. Everybody will find this in their new sobriety. And we'll react sanely and normally. And we find that this has happened automatically, all at once. You know, you don't know. I remember I didn't know it started happening to me as a result of these steps. We see that this new attitude toward liquor has been given us without a thought or effort on our part. We don't have to work at this. We work the steps and this comes to us. We're not finding it neither. We're avoiding temptation. And for many times, you know, during the months that I tried to do it on my own, I had to fight this and avoid temptation. And quite naturally said, we are not even sworn off. And God, how many times did we swear off? We haven't even sworn off this time. You know, I think that's what's the real benefit of this program. And I like to put in that right perspective sometime. And I used to say, well, I gotta quit. We was always quitting, golly. And quitting wasn't my problem anyway. Never did have a quitting problem, because when I got sick, I could quit. I had a problem starting. I couldn't stop starting. I could quit, but I couldn't stop starting. That's the problem. But if you don't start, you want to quit. It said instead the problem has been removed. It's not there anymore. It doesn't exist for us. And I know in the early sobriety, I know most of y'all had experienced a lot of people outside the fellowship that say, well, I know you're glad you quit. And you say, well, I haven't quit. And they say, well, yes, you have. You know, and they don't understand it. Well, we haven't quit. We just don't have the problem anymore. And that is the miracle. It does not exist for us. We're either cocky or we're afraid. This is our experience. This is how we act so long as we keep in a fit spiritual condition. And we keep in a fit spiritual condition by repracticing the same working steps that we got to the promise in step 9. It's quite obvious. There's nothing new from here out. Just a continuous practice. And of course, quite naturally, as we practice, we should get better at really applying the steps to our lives. When something comes up in our lives each day, we can remember we got the inventory process. The inventory process has taught us something. When something comes up, we can look at it and what is it? What did they do? Who did it? What did they do? Which part of self did they strike? Which character defect have I got involved? We can deal with that, and like the book tells us, and we can get rid of that right away. Immediately, we can process this thing right away and get it out of our mind, and we can go back. And you know, it says sobriety and the quality of life, as we look at it in the book, it's not getting anything. Throughout these steps, it's all about getting rid of things. You know, it's taking away my difficulties, remove the things. It's all a process of elimination. And as we continue to eliminate these things, the quality of our lives expands. It is easy to let up on a spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels, for we are headed for trouble if we do, for alcohol is a subtle foe. We are not cured of alcoholism. What we really have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition.
Now there's where the word maintenance comes in. One day at a time. We can maintain one day at a time, but not for an indefinite period. We stay sober one day at a time.
And again, we can maintain our fit spiritual condition by practicing step 10 on a daily basis. Every day is a day when we must carry the visions of God's will into all our activities. How can our best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. These thoughts must go with us constantly. We can exercise our willpower along this line all we wish. It is the proper use of the will. Now here at this point, we can see, remember in step 3 where we made a decision to turn over our will to God, and we understood Him, and then we worked the rest of these steps. And throughout the process, God worked on our self-will, and now right here we get our self-will back after it's corrected. He tells us how to use our self-will. Self-will is a part of human life, and without that we wouldn't be successful individuals when our self-will is healthy. But right here he gives us our self-will back on page 85. I love the preciseness of the big book. But he gives us our self-will back on 85, but he makes sure we got our sanity back on 84. It would be dangerous to get your will back before you got your sanity. But, self-will, and I see this in every alcoholic, I see will. I see corrected will in the life of many alcoholics that I work with. It's an amazing thing, the progress the living that people can do and the progress they make in their lives. They still have this will and this drive. It's a great gift from God, and I think that willpower, if correctly used, it's the essence of life. And we people we've been gifted with strong will. And either I think sometimes we're going to be real successful at living, or it's going to be a self-destructive process. We're not mediocre. We're never going to be in the between. We have a great gift of strong will. And it's how we focus this. This is why we need God to direct this will. And once it's corrected, then we can really be successful in a lot of areas of our lives and do many, many things. And this is the miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous, to see the people get up and to see the things they do and accomplish in their lives after this will is corrected, and they can really use it in the constructive process.
People that don't understand this refer to us as weak-willed people. But what they don't understand is we are the strongest-willed people in the world. Now, you've got to be tougher than hell to be an alcoholic. That's all there is to it. You've got to have strong will. You've got to be able and willing to get up and get out of bed and go to work when you're sicker than all the other people laying in the hospitals are. You've got to be willing to vomit 2 or 3 times in the morning in order to get a drink down. You've got to be willing to take all the ridicule and the anger from other people in order to be a practicing alcoholic. You've got to be tougher than hell. Weak-willed people give up. They give up after they vomit 2 or 3 times. They give up when they get thrown in jail the first time. They give up the first damn car wreck. We are strong-willed people. And I think one of the most beautiful things in the world is to see an alcoholic make up his mind that he's through with that damn drinking, and take all of his willpower and, with the use of God's help, turn around and use that to stay sober. You see, today we have an obsession of the mind to stay sober. We have an obsession of the mind to stay sober. That's more important to me than anything in the world. And I exercise all my willpower along that line. Today I know I stay sober through God's will, God's power, and God's grace. And I know that I must have a fit spiritual condition or I can't stay sober. And I exercise my willpower along that line. I make me do the things I don't want to do in order to be able to stay the way I am and to grow better in the future, to grow further and further and further. I don't think we realize how much danger we are in whenever we play around with anger. I don't think we realize how much danger we're in when we let ourselves get worried and depressed and filled with anxiety. I don't think we realize how close we are to insanity returning. The mind can just turn just like that and say, by God, a drink would make me feel better. And we can go get that drink and take it without ever really realizing what's going on. It is only through this fit spiritual condition that we stay sober. And it is through step 10 that we stay that way over a continual period of time and gradually grow and get better and better and better. It really does work. I think we're going to quit right here for this afternoon. We'll see you all tonight and finish up our part this evening. Thank you again for being here. Charlie?